Okay, so I wanted to post your final exam a little early uh, because you also have a paper to write, and I will post a separate video for your paper. But I wanted to give you enough time to work on both of these because um, the exam is not an in-class exam. It's something that you can work on your own. Okay, so I am hoping that you will find this exam to be positive. It will be familiar. It is the same case that you had in your first exam, case of Sam. I added a couple little things to his assessment that you can use just because we have different theories for this exam. Um, I would ask that you make sure to use two techniques. Make sure not just to mention terminology, but to apply the terminology. So people might use a phrase and they say, well, this might happen. Okay, well, how? Explain it. If you're using a term, you need to explain that term and how it would play out in the session. If you're using a technique, you can't just say, I'm going to use this technique. You have to actually describe how that technique played out in the session. Two techniques for each essay answer. Um, Also, I want to know what this theory will look like with this specific client over 2 months, 8 weeks, 8 sessions. What what would happen using this theory with the client? Be specific. Um, so uh, I think the biggest problem with the first exams was that one, in general, students may not have been specific or detailed enough. Number two, they might have just used terminologies or the name of techniques without actually applying them descriptively to the client in sessions. Um, you can use a dialogue to tell me how that might play out. Um, so it's all about detail, specifics, application to this client. And of course, the other uh, issue was not going into enough detail for the treatment over the next 8 weeks with this client. Um, so I should be able to read your exam, each essay question, and guess which theory it is just by looking at the terminology, the techniques, and the treatment plan. Now, here's my recommendation. You can use the book, you can use the PowerPoints, and you can use my notes. Use them all. Get some detail. Don't copy anything. It all has to be in your own words. Applied to this client as if you were the therapist writing a report or in therapy with this client. Don't say, if I was the therapist, I would. You are the therapist. Tell me what you are doing with this client. So my recommendation is use all those things. Don't go outside of those resources and look around the internet. If the book mentions other theories that are related, stick with the original theory. Um, so um, like person-centered, don't mention other more modern theories like emotional counseling or things like that. Stick with the original theory, whatever it is, and the original techniques. So be specific. I would, in order to check my answer, I would go through the notes and make sure you included most of the high points of the notes in some way. I know I said that it needs to be at least 1 page double spaced, most likely be a little more than that. Sorry, but it's open book. I'd rather write a little more, whatever's needed, and have all those resources than having a multiple choice test or fill in the blank test or something like that. That leads me to my last point. You still need to memorize all this. Just because it's an open book test and it's an essay doesn't mean that you don't have to memorize all these things. They're all going to be on the comps. They're all going to be on the National Counseling Exam for your LPC. You will not have time to memorize what's in my notes, which you can use as a study guide at the end of your time in the counseling program. You can't memorize everything for all of these classes. You have to memorize it as you go. I know everybody has a lot of work to do, but that's my big fear with this. I like exams like this because you're applying your knowledge and using these skills. I think it's shows mastery learning, but it doesn't show me that you've memorized the material. Only a fill-in-the-blank test shows me that. So be a responsible graduate student and memorize it. That's all I can suggest. I used flashcards. You're going to use all of these theories in practicum with real clients. You need to have this stuff memorized. So I want to stop sounding like, this parental professor, so I will stop now, but it is your responsibility to memorize this. If you have any questions, please email me. I know one of the questions is, when is this exam due? And just because I might be reusing this video, I don't want to give a date on the video, but I will post a due date. Okay. Okay, thanks.